So it comes down to how bad you want it. And at that time, I was laser focused and clear on my drive. And one might argue I still am.
Oh,
So,
clearly.
Do you want to be better with money but dread the math? I get it. That's why this show is not focused on math, the markets, meme stocks, or even economic predictions. It is focused on how money fits into your daily life, from having healthy money conversations to caring for an aging parent. I'm Karen Coyne, certified financial planner professional and your host of Money Without Math. Join us for conversations that are practical, sometimes philosophical, and always fresh. Learn more about me at raymondjames.com/clarity, and be sure to subscribe.
I've been interested in patterns since I was a kid, from mathematical patterns to visual patterns. And pattern recognition is key to our childhood development. But as adults, somehow we often overlook our own patterns. In particular, how our emotional and personal patterns are connected to our money and to our lives. Our guest today has said that our patterns shape us and they can also trap us, something she has learned both personally and professionally. Our guest today is Bukola Oguntala. She's a keynote speaker, HR strategist, and leadership coach. She's also a podcast host of Beyond the Pattern, Life and Leadership Unlocked. She's a first-generation Nigerian American whose name means add to the greatness, and she joins us today from Atlanta. Welcome, Bukola.
thank you for having me, Karen. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Patterns, like I mentioned, truly are something I have been interested in a very long time. And personally, though, you have had 20 years of experience in HR.
20 years.
20 years. What did that teach you or show you about patterns?
Yeah. So kind of like what you said, just growing up as first generation American, when your parents don't know this system, a lot of times you have to read the room, you have to pick up on subtleties, and that's where patterns really played a big role for me. I unexpectedly found myself, homeless and parentless at 12. For a number of reasons that I go into on my podcast and in my keynote. But, that situation led to me having to really figure out a formula to be successful in my life. And, HR just really helped me kind of build on that foundation that I already had, because there was already a big kind of desire for lifelong learning, that was really ignited at the beginning. Just my coaches were like my family. And so really through sports, I really honed in on my strengths, how to continuously improve and get better each season, each meet, each, game or race. And that's those same kind of wins or approaches are what I applied to my experience in HR. And so HR, what's been great, whether I've worked in pharmaceuticals or on Wall Street or even, manufacturing, across the board, I'm dealing with leaders. I'm dealing with leaders and having to coach them through change and transitions and teams, some teams that like them, some teams that don't like them. And so for me, it's important for me to first understand my patterns so I can be effective in helping leaders uncover and recognize and move forward beyond their patterns. And so, HR just really helped me see like this giant case study of what works and what doesn't work in the corporate context. And because so often I would get the backstory of my, people would share with me their backstory, their things about their personal lives, it would help me kind of weave in, approaches that made the most sense in the corporate context. So that's a long way of saying I think HR really helped build off so much of what I uncovered as a young person. And because I was all about continuously improving, not perfection, but continuously improving, by the time I got to HR, I was really able to apply that real time to coaching leaders, coaching myself, and just finding ways to be more effective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said a couple things that, one thing you said talking about the immigrant experience reminded me of a conversation I've had with a friend of mine who's also, immigrant family. And we've had this conversation about how sometimes we can pick up cues that other people don't seem to pick up on. They just don't read it. And her philosophy is that it's because of that immigrant mentality that is very strong still in each of us, that we are just maybe looking for more actively looking for threats, or just more sensitive to that, for example.
Yeah, I agree. I think first of all, I very much consider myself American, but I also consider myself as Nigerian. So it's like my experience as, a person raised by immigrants or influenced by culture, it's like I had one foot in each culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so at any point in time, I had to consider my audience and be able to, operate in a way that would be effective for that audience. And so, yeah, I do think there are subtleties that come up that may be overlooked if you just grown up in this environment. There's just a lot of subtleties you maybe take for granted. And when you're someone who's having to learn an environment, you maybe pay attention at a different level.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that gets to the root of what you're saying. I definitely feel like I've had to observe, I've had to pick up on patterns, I've had to pick up on subtleties, I've had to pay attention to, oh, that worked, oh, that didn't work. Okay, what were the steps involved that were different that time versus the other time? And that's how I continue to get better.
Yes. What were the sports that you played?
So I ran track. I ran the quarter. That was I started sports at like 8 years old. And so track was my first sport. Loved it. It really taught me a lot around mental strength and focus. And just really, I think more and more, even present day, I've realized the role that your mindset plays in shaping who you are and what you're able to go after in your life. Like I would hear it come up a lot as a young person, but I definitely, as I sit here in front of you at 52, I can totally see how that mindset can make or break you. And that goes hand in hand with the patterns that I talk about.
Right. Yes. That often go back to our childhoods.
Yeah. And you asked about sports. So I played like every, track, soccer, field hockey. I was captain of my field hockey team. I did student government, the marching band. So I really took being a leader on campus very seriously. I found it as a way to just really, understand my strength and my quirks. And it helped me also understand how to influence as a young person. Mm-hmm. And so by the time I was able to progress in my career, whether it was through college or even early in, I mentioned I was in consulting, I worked on Wall Street, I was even in a management program. I think all that kind of, helped build off of my foundation so that I had a clear sense of how I show up, because a big part of leadership is about just getting in touch with how you show up, and there are a lot of times where, unfortunately, for a lot of reasons, we don't pick up on subtleties around how we show up. So similar to how you talked about how, being first generation American, how there might be a hypersensitivity on picking up on subtleties. I think the same way when it comes to understanding ourselves, we're very close to it, right? We're very close to ourselves. We see ourselves every day. But there are blind spots.
Completely.
Yeah. And so it helps to really have people around you that can kind of tap you on the shoulder like, hey, just so you know,
yes.
you sounded crazy,
Exactly. And then to be the kind of person that takes the feedback, because then most people will say, but I'm not crazy, but I said what I said, and this is what I meant. And I was trying to be helpful. And okay, and that was your intention, but this is how you sounded to everyone else in the room. And, I've learned so much just the hard way as an adult over the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
52 years that
same.
yeah, you think you know yourself, you spend every day with yourself, and yet I continue to learn things that I do. And to your point, like with sports, whether it's on the tennis court, whether it's at home, at work, that I'm not even aware of. And just a funny example that I'll share with you is I never realized I'm one of those people that makes a lot of noise when I eat. Like, like I have to, like really experience it. And I had no idea I was making so much noise
Oh,
until it was called to my attention. And now I can't, of course, I can't unhear it,
yeah.
unrecognize it, unsee it. But I also see my younger son doing it. And it's just comical. Because I know he doesn't see it. Um,
Right.
but yeah, to your point, I mean, I could have maybe spent my whole life not even recognizing that I do that
Yeah.
if it weren't for someone saying, "Hey, Karen, like, do you realize you're making a lot of noise?"
Yeah, but this is where I'm a big fan of giving us grace. Like give each other grace. You have to give yourself grace, right? Because when you know better, you do better. But for me, as I do this work, um, whether we're talking about my background or someone's trusting me to coach them, it's more about what's effective for the moment. It's not really about right or wrong, or at least I don't see it that way. I don't see it as right or wrong. It's about, okay, is that the most effective for this moment? And just continue to build up your toolkit so that you have a wealth of tools that you can pull from because your audience is going to continue to change.
Oh, yes, right. And agrees. And so let's agree that there's no right or wrong for the most part. However, let's talk about some of the patterns that maybe keep people from accomplishing their goals, keep them running in circles. What, with all of your experience as a leadership strat or an HR strategist, leadership, HR, what are some of those problematic patterns that you often see people falling into?
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, there's a long list of patterns, but I would say that in general, extremes. I think extremes are something that we all have to watch, because you may find, well, I'll just use myself as an example because it helps kind of take the pressure off of folks. But, early on, just being, a child athlete, I was passionate about sports. Like I said, my coaches were like my dads. I really got laser focused on performance because sports is about performance. And so you get a win, you get recognition from that. And when you start the working world or even, college or, settings where you have to do work in teams, it's easy to kind of fall back on that performance mentality. But as you start to move from being an individual contributor, someone who's running a solo race versus group sports or group dynamics at work, you have to be able to expand. And so that's what I mean when I talk about extremes,
Mhm.
because the goal is to be flexible so that you can make room for more ways of engaging people that are effective, and the goal is to just be in a position where you know yourself well enough where you can be so present to the person you're talking to that you can pick up on the subtleties and adjust your style as needed. And so for me, performance started out in sports. When I moved into the corporate context, first few jobs, you're working as an individual. So you can go hard, you can focus on performance, and that can work in a lot of environments. I mentioned I worked on Wall Street and investment banking, very much about, survival of the fittest, go, go, go. But, as you move up and you get more experience, and let's say you get promoted, your influence grows, and you're responsible for more people. So you have to influence more people. And that style may work for some, but there'll be missed opportunities. So for me, it's not like it was that dramatic where it was anything major, but I just saw over time in managing people that there were a few people that, for whatever reason, I didn't feel I connected with. So there was a missed opportunity to invite their ideas, to invite their perspective. And that could have allowed us to be more innovative, more creative, go after solutions. So for me, I realized performing is still valuable,
Mm-hmm.
but building in that flexibility so that I have some room to, just really expand and operate at different levels, instead of focusing on performance, maybe focusing more on just really me taking a back seat and finding ways to elevate the personalities on my team so they can feel comfortable speaking freely. And now I'm maybe playing more of the back seat. So does that help give you some perspective? I mean, there's a long list of some common, you know, patterns. I mean, I'm doing a lot of work right now about burnout patterns because that seems to be very relevant to what's happening, especially after COVID and, all the uncertainty that we're dealing with, after COVID. But at a basic level, what I want your audience to take away is just the role that extremes play in helping or hurt us. Even if we talk about someone, working with you, or even working with me, if they're focused on like clutching, holding on tight to their money,
Mm-hmm.
and they have these non-negotiables, it becomes very difficult to get them to explore, right? Explore. And that's a big part of the partnership.
Or trust, ultimately,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, like I had shared with you earlier that, my mom is, as an immigrant, is often very slow to trust, or slow to trust isn't even, she just is she can be very distrustful, and fearful that people are trying to take advantage of her. But if you come into a relationship with this mindset of they're trying to pull one over me, they're trying to take advantage of me, it's going to be really difficult to have a fruitful relationship, right? Because you're coming at the table. Are you really sharing, all the relevant information? Are you taking advice? Yeah. Are you showing up in the way that you need to? And as you were sharing, some of the examples tied to performance and burnout, I was thinking about your very personal story, which really you just glossed over.
I glossed over it so quickly, and forgive me. We could back up and explore it a little bit more.
I mean, you don't have to give like the whole 30-minute, keynote version of your story, but I mean, you had a really traumatic, challenging, adversity that you had to overcome, losing both of your parents. And certainly that shaped, I would imagine helped shaped you and, into the completely independent woman that you are.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, it's kind of a blur who I was before the loss of my parents as well as my home. It's at 52, when I look back at it, even when I meet friends' kids and they're 12 years old, and I'm like, is that what 12 looks like? I'm like, what? But yeah, at 12 years old, I found myself in this situation where didn't have family in this country and parentless, homeless. And yeah, it was, you ask yourself, okay, what would I do in that situation? I mean, at the end of the day, you find out in that moment. And so I had to really rely on a lot of people in New Jersey, and I praise God for so many of them because they made room for me. I had to ask a lot of people for a place to live, and many of these are folks that grew up with me. The families knew me, they knew my family, and they knew the circumstance. And so I was able to do that back to back to get through high school. And, I just was like, oh my goodness, I think it just also gave me that drive and that push to just, I want to be independent. So I don't have to rely on people. And so that worked until it doesn't work,
That's the key, right?
Right. It can work until it doesn't work. And you have to pick up on those extremes, like, oh, this extreme is not working anymore. This pattern isn't working anymore. And it did help me, but it started to hurt me. So yeah, that was a very vulnerable time. And it still blows my mind today when I think about it, because it's so long ago, it's so long ago, but it definitely formed who I am as a person. And I think it put me in touch with my inner strength pretty early. So it kind of probably created too much boldness, if I'm being honest, too much boldness, especially when you add in New Jersey, being from Jersey, being Nigerian, it was like, what? I can do anything, So-
Listen, people who do not know her whole, she's leaving out so much. Bukola was on the phone at 12 years old, using her network, basically calling up people and saying, hey, I need help. Can I stay with you? Can you help me? And I talk about bold at 12 years old.
Yeah. So people had seen me as a leader already. They had gotten to know me, whether they dropped their kids off for track practice. They saw me, they knew my family, they knew my siblings. And so when I picked up the phone to call, many people, they just wanted to find out ways to help. So obviously a question like that on a Sunday night when school's the next day, that's a lot to process. And so it required me being flexible, because I had to, some people were available to help me for, maybe a weekend, and some, I could stay for 6 months. But there, I was unexpected, and they made room for me. And so I appreciated that. But yeah, it was a very uncertain time. So when I think about uncertainty, that's the bar for me. So today, uncertainty is still a lot for us to process. But the thing that's different from a 12-year-old experiencing certain uncertainty versus a 52-year-old. So, when we're that young, a lot of times we just don't have perspective that this will pass.
Right.
We don't know that this is temporary. So it just feels like my whole world is coming to an end. I'm sure some of your audience may have children and they're going to a prom, and the prom is like, oh my God, this is a big deal, So it feels like life or death. But as we get older, we have perspective, and we can see all the different moments we've had to overcome. And that allows us to be more courageous and confident, taking risks, because we're not that 12-year-old, and we've had some wins. And the goal is to just gradually just make some room for some new ideas, so that you can start to expand your thinking. And sometimes it helps to partner up with someone who's a coach, whether that's someone in your role who might be a financial advisor, or someone in my role. But you have to really leave some room for some new knowledge, some new ideas to come in, so that you're building on that momentum. Mm-hmm. You're not leaning on that perspective of that 12-year-old, right? Because that experience, there are coping skills that were formed in that moment that helped me get through that time. And I give myself grace, because those coping skills helped me. But at a certain point, you still have to draw the line and realize, okay, that's no longer helping me. Now I have to shift. Yeah.
Yes. And that's hard.
Yeah. It comes down to how bad you want it, though. It comes down to how bad you want it. I'm sure you talk to folks and like, oh, I want wealth. I want this. I want that. Right. So it comes down to how bad you want it. And at that time, I was laser focused and clear on my drive. And one might argue I still am.
Oh, clearly. But there was something else that you said that I wanted to call out, because it was about you already showing up as a leader. And so when you made that ask, it was easy, because people knew, okay, this is a great kid. Of course we want to help. And I think I was just hearing this subtle reminder in the back of my head about how we show up every day before there's a crisis or before we need to make an ask or before, right, we lose a job or we decide to totally shift gears or whatever it is, like, who have we been showing up as? Right? Because the fact that you had been a leader, you had been, a good student, just made it easy for people to say yes to you. And I think that's an important reminder that, you might not need anything now. Maybe you're in a great place right now, but as I like to talk about, like, life will punch us in the face. If it hasn't happened yet, it will. It's just a matter of when, not if. And so how are you showing up now?
Yeah. And I don't want to act like it was smooth sailing because some people said no. Some people said no. Let's be clear, it's New Jersey. So folks, you
Also
have to
said
take
no.
some people said no, but again, it's about how bad you want it. And so, in that moment with, someone with no family in this country, I had to figure it out.
And what point were you in your life when you realized that, like, these patterns from long ago were no longer serving you?
Yeah. I think definitely first of all, once I left the Northeast and moved to Georgia for college, it's all America, but it's different parts of the country. And so I started to even notice the way I approached leading myself and others had to adjust in college because, in the Northeast, there's a certain rhythm that's a little different and directness is appreciated. And so you adjust to that environment. But there's some things that work in New Jersey that don't work in other parts of the world, And so moving to the South for college, I had to adjust my style. I went to an all-women's college, Spelman College, a historically Black college. And so, a few of my professors, I think they pulled quite a few of us to the side. We were New York and New Jersey folks. And they were like, you, and you. You need to learn how to ask questions. You need to learn how to, tone it down. And we're like, what's going on? Because you're just taught to speak up in New Jersey. You're taught that. And so, from there, I got to live in multiple places. And I think that first experience really knocked me across the head enough to kind of see, like, okay, I have to keep learning. I have to keep picking up on subtleties. It doesn't go away just because I'm in college.
Right.
And then when I moved into the working world, the management programs I was in, I'm managing people twice my age, and I'm getting coached and developed and guided. So as a part of that experience, especially in HR, you get access to development at different levels. So assessments and, through all these different assessments, I was able to learn in a more formal way some of the themes that would come up. And so when you focus on performance and results, that's not bad, but over time, it doesn't always allow people to get close to you. It doesn't always allow you to build tight relationships. Now, we referenced how I had good relationships back home, but these are folks that grew up with me since kindergarten. And so they just had a lot more data points. In the working world, you don't have as many.
Right.
They move quickly. And so that's an example of, I think, going into environments where I was able to get developed in a structured way, had mentors around me that took an interest in me. I was coachable and I was also, hungry to excel. And so that's what got me clear, like, oh, this is the performance piece. And when my mentors were like, they want to get to know you. Your direct reports want to know you more. I'm like, oh. So I even had to learn how to position my background because I got used to when I shared about my background, I could see the discomfort. Folks are like, oh, she's dealt with a lot of loss and death. They didn't know how to be, and it made them uncomfortable. And I just had to, give people grace and just, I'm okay, but this is my story. And it has informed my who I am and my approach to leading. And so it's helpful if you're going to report to me to know that.
Right.
Just so you don't make things about anything else. So does that help? I know I rambled a little bit.
Well, yes, you were talking about, college and basically how I mean, it was not subtle at all. They just pulled you aside and said,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess I stood out at a women's college, but a few of us from New York and New Jersey, I think we stood out.
yeah.
And I'm thankful for people being courageous enough to pull you to the side. Because I do think, I think the people that care enough to have difficult conversations with you, I think because it's so hard to do, I've seen leaders not be able to do it, and it affects someone going throughout their entire career not knowing
Right.
that they have this area that's getting in their way. So I really, for the most part, I take it as a piece of love. If someone is really coming at me sincerely and talking through like, hey, this is going to get in your way, I appreciate it.
Yes.
And then, as I progressed in my career, I even saw how my mindset shifted around money. Like, I think we've talked about this, how at first, my mindset was more like cautious, and eventually I started to save. And then all of a sudden I found myself, I'm not surviving anymore.
Right.
I'm having some wins. So I started to expand and leave some room for new knowledge. And then eventually, I was able to take more risks with my investments. So I got into real estate. I think I've talked with you about some of the different investments. Like, I diversified my investing. And that has led to, just that creates the multiplier. It creates the multiplier, to be quite honest, and it accelerates your path towards wealth. I mean, I'm in a foreclosure today. This is a foreclosed house that I purchased that not everybody wanted me to purchase, but I purchased and I renovated it. It was extremely stressful. And, by that point, I had already lived in different homes, and, you buy a home, you sell it, maybe you break even, you buy a home, you sell it, maybe you take a loss. And so I'd learned enough from those different events where when I bought this foreclosure, it was really an opportunity for me to apply a lot of the lessons learned, as well as, I'm still a runner, so I listen to audio books and all types of things and podcasts. So, it was just really great to apply those lessons in this situation. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was operating small.
Yes. Well, that, and what I've heard you say several times is the leaving room to learn and grow and take in new information, take in new ideas. I mean, it sounds very simple on the surface. Sounds so simple. Like, okay, how hard is that, right? But we know how hard that can be.
Yeah.
And again, in every aspect of your life, whether it's, your personal life at home, whether it's, working with your kids, at work, on the tennis court, on the track, gotta leave a little bit of room, gotta be a little loose to take in information and shift when the pattern no longer serves you. That's what I'm hearing. And I think
you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
And especially relevant for people who are high performers. And we know people who listen to podcasts, you're not the average Joe. People who listen to podcasts are generally higher achieving folks. Like, they have a higher household income. They are multitasking as they're listening to this, they're vacuuming or, doing something productive. And so these are the very folks that would be prone to some of these patterns that you mentioned where, being really results focused, being really performance focused, it can be great until it no longer is great.
Right. And that's a good tidbit, because I don't think I've realized that about people that listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
It makes sense, but I don't think I realized that.
I mean, this has been, like I said, I could talk about patterns forever because I love patterns and I just think that they're so fascinating, and your story is amazing. And I just have this vision of you in my head as 12-year-old Bukola picking up the rotary phone, or actually we may have had push button by then.
I think it was push button. It was a yellow,
but still with a corded telephone
very
cord.
Very
But Bukola, is there, any other thought, any other actionable, takeaway, anything that you want to leave listeners today as they're thinking about their own patterns?
Yeah. I guess, I would start with really getting in touch with what you want out of your life. Because, sometimes there's just maybe friction or a common complaint that you may find you have. And it can be deja vu where it's like, I'm here again. Why is this happening? And that friction is an opportunity to dig deeper and see what that's about, right? Because, oftentimes it can affect your career, but it could also be affecting, you as a whole, or even, you at home. And so for me, I think it starts with getting in touch with what you want for yourself and your life. And then also getting to a point where you can pay attention to the friction, quiet the noise in your mind, because even as you talked about your mom, or any of us, we might be like, not as trusting. And there might be a conversation that's in our head that gets in the way of us being present. Maybe as someone's meeting with you for the first time to talk about their investment strategy, they're in their head and not even hearing what you're saying because they're like, I can't give over the control. I can't give over the control. So you really have to find a way to quiet that noise, consider what you don't know, and then leave room for some new knowledge to come in. Doesn't have to be a whole lot. Just take small steps each day. But that can make a difference between having a little more balanced of a life versus a life with burnout patterns. Yeah. So, yeah. And I think I talked to you about how I'm going to be doing some work around burnout in January, just because it's been feedback that's been directed at me from folks that have listened to the podcast. And then I continue to see that come up quite a bit.
Yes.
Just
burnout comes out a lot. It comes out quite a bit on this show.
Yeah, since COVID, and it's continuing to come up with all the change on the horizon. And so I'm going to be launching a training. It's going to be for a small group, but it'll be in January where I'll have an opportunity to talk through some of the most common burnout patterns and how to spot them and how to start to shift them. So I'm excited. And for anyone interested, obviously they can reach out to me either through LinkedIn, through YouTube, my podcast, Beyond the Pattern. And they can also reach out on my website, and I will send them a link just because I'm trying to keep it small.
Yeah, we will share a link to your social and websites in the show notes. So Bukola, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always great to see you and catch up. And I am coming to Atlanta and we're going to play tennis.
Oh, yes. I would love that. I can run, I can move fast, but you'll have to talk.
You're going to learn in no time because you're a natural athlete. You're probably going to be kicking my butt in short order. So. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Any opinions expressed by Bukola Oguntala are not necessarily those of Raymond James. Raymond James is not affiliated with nor endorses Bukola Oguntala. This podcast is for informational purposes only.